Hello everyone, I'm MVL and welcome to this epic game room tour. In this video I will give you a tour of my massive man cave with a ton of different gaming systems and over 1,400 games. I will be showing you all of my loose cartridges and boxed games in this video, as well as picking out some games to highlight along the way as well. Now, I don't focus on collecting on any one particular system, so this video will feature all the way from vintage computers like the Commodore 64 and VIC-20, and classic consoles like the Atari 2600, all the way up to modern systems like the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. I'm super excited to give you guys a look inside of my Aladdin's cave of gaming. Let's kick this off by showing you my consoles, and as you can see I have a bunch of systems hooked up ready to go and play on both my flat screen and my CRT TV. So let's start off strong with my Vectrex. I am very happy to have this system. It's really cool with a built-in monitor and vector graphics. You can see it here playing Mindstorm, the built-in game. Next up, on a Sony Trinitron running Galaxian, we have my Atari 2600. Hooked up to my other Sony Trinitron, this is my widescreen. We have a bunch of great systems here. The Nintendo 64 by S-Video, and the rest of these are RGB SCART, my PlayStation 2, which is also how I play my PlayStation 1 games, my original Xbox, and my Sega Dreamcast as well. And over here we have some of my modern systems. We have the original Xbox One that has a hard drive on it, and there's the Kinect for the Xbox 360, my Wii U, and my Wii, which is how I play GameCube games currently. And I still own a GameCube, it's just not plugged in. Under here we have my Sega Mega Drive Master System converter, and we have my Master System as well. Now, I don't have space to have everything hooked up at once. My Retro Freak handles a lot of my cartridge systems. Over here we have my Sega Mega Drive Model 1 and 2. The Model 2 has the Mega CD attached. Down here we have a bunch of different systems. There's a Mega Drive plug and play here, which is pretty cool. Next to that we have my Pong system, the Micro 10. Really cool to have that. And next to that we have my data set. This is how I will play my Commodore cassette games on my Commodore 64. And under that we have the PlayStation 1, which has a stuck lid. Here we have my Amiga 500 and Commodore 64 computers, and if I need to play American games, there's an American PlayStation 1 and 2 American Super Nintendos as well. Here's my PSP, which I play through component cables on my TV, my Game Boy Advance SP, and under that is my DS, and over here we have my 3DS, which is a Pokemon X and Y model, and under that we have my Pro 200, which actually has a good version of Tetris on it. I found that in my backyard. I thought it was lost, which is pretty cool. And here's my GameCube, which has a Game Boy player attachment to it. Really cool there. And here's my Super Nintendo, and under that is my NES. And this is my C64 Mini, and there's the Sega Saturn. Next up we have some oddball systems, starting off with my Panasonic 3DO. If you're not playing on a 3DO, what are you playing with? Next to that we have the Philips CDI, which you may know about because of the really bad Zelda games that were on it. And then we have the TurboGrafx 16, oddball because it's PAL, it can't take the CD attachment. Here we have the Xbox 360. This is the E model, the latest model that came out. It's really loud. And next to that we have the PlayStation TV. This is how I play my Vita games on the TV. And next to that we have my Super Nintendo Classic Mini. Really happy to have that. And buried under controllers here is the PlayStation Classic. Yeah, I'm going to leave that buried under controllers right there. And we have my Nintendo Switch here. This is a really cool system. I use it in TV mode, and plugged in charging is my Pokeball Plus, which I've modified to remove the pesky strap. Here we have my Wii U gamepad, which is next to my PlayStation 3. This is the latest model with a sliding lid, although I hear the Slim is better. And then we have my PlayStation 4. It's a 1TB Uncharted 4 edition. There's also an additional 4TB hard drive plugged in as well. I use a Panasonic HD TV for my HDMI systems, including the Retro Freak. It handles many of my retro cartridge games, as I can't have everything set up at once. I've done a review of this on my channel as well if you want to check that out. And here is the NES Classic Mini. Now I'll quickly go over my current PCs. Here's a Windows 7 laptop and a Windows XP laptop. And here is my Windows 10 Stream Machine, which is also what I use to edit my videos. Now I'll quickly show you some controllers before we dive into the games. These controllers here I have more readily to hand. These are ones I would use more often than others. We have a lot of decent controllers in here, a Dreamcast controller, Wii controllers, and stuff I would use all of the time, like GameCube controllers, which I really like for multiplayer games on the GameCube, and Nintendo 64 controllers, including this Pikachu N64 controller. I love me some N64 multiplayer games like Mario Kart, so gotta have them to hand. And here's some more controllers in a bigger container here. Lots of light guns, PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2 light guns, CDI light gun there, because I love light gun games. And there's a weird Dreamcast controller there, and a turbo PlayStation 1 controller. Too many oddball controllers to show in this video, but I'll highlight some, like this Sharkfin N64 controller. That's a Commodore 64 light gun, and this is a joystick for the Mega Drive, even though it looks like a Commodore joystick, which is kind of cool. And we have a fight stick for the Sega Mega Drive and for the PlayStation, which looks like a PlayStation, which is really cool. And now we're going to check out all of the games in no particular order whatsoever. This shelf contains many of my Mega Drive games, but we're going to start off with my Amiga, VIC-20 and Commodore 64. Many of these are in a different location, which I'll show you later in the video. I have a ton of Commodore 64 cassettes, and these are of course double stacked as well. Here's my NES loose cartridges, which I'm in the process of putting in these protectors from my Game Vault. This is the Guardian Legend, an amazing game, and Pro Protector, which you may know as Contra. And over here we have the rest of my loose cartridges, a ton of great games on the NES. It's a wonderful system. Here we have Blaster Master. This is a fantastic game. And over here we have Destination Earthstar, which is really cool actually. The game changes from first person to side-scrolling shooter. Donkey Kong Classics there, a classic collection of games, and Gunsmoke, which is a fantastic top-down shooter. I've got a lot of love for the NES, so many great games on this system. Here's Robocop by Ocean, and we have Sky Shark, which is a fantastic vertical scrolling shooter. And here we have Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles, which is what it was known as over here, instead of Ninja. And I'm going to give you a look at some of my boxed games right here, ranging from the Famicom, NES to Super Nintendo up to the Nintendo 64. So here's a boxed Famicom game for Super Xevious. Interesting box there, kind of like a Mega Drive box, which is quite cool. Then we have some boxed NES games, Lolo 2, wonderful puzzle game over there. Then we have Gauntlet 2, I love Gauntlet, it's fantastic. We've got Pac-Man there, of course, it's a classic, and Solstice, which is a wonderful puzzle game as well. Next to that we have Star Wars, which is really fun. And here's a Super Famicom game, which I can play on my Retro Freak with an English patch. Here onto the Super Nintendo we have Secret of Evermore, and I have this in a box protector as well from my Game Vault. I'm going to try and get more of these box protectors. I already have some, I just haven't assembled them yet for more of my games. Those ones also fit N64 boxes as well. Here's an odd N64 box for Aiden Chronicles, the first Mage, but it's still a really cool game and I'm glad to have it. But that's a reproduction box. There's Banjo-Kazooie there, a great game, and Donkey Kong 64, again in a protector. I'm going to try and put more of my games in these protectors. They're really useful in protecting your games. Really helps to save the boxes from getting crushed on the shelf or from handling or transport. Here's some more N64 games, and moving on to Master System as well. And again, I'm going to highlight some of these to show you. Here's Jet Force Gemini. I will also show my loose cartridges. They're on a different shelf, so I'll get to them later in the video. Here's Perfect Dark, a fantastic first-person shooter, great multiplayer game, as is Pokemon Stadium. Real great fun if you've got a bunch of friends around an N64. And there's The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. What a fantastic game that is. Over here on the Master System, we have Dragon Crystal, which is an awesome randomized role-playing game. And here we have Power Strike, which is a vertical scrolling shoot 'em up. I love scrolling shooters, and this game is great. And over here we have Shadow Dancer, The Secret of Shinobi. That's a cool game as well. Over here we have some more Master System games leading into the Mega Drive. And I love the Mega Drive. So many great games on that system. I have Shadow of the Beast on the Master System just because of that heavy metal cover. And here's Time Soldiers, a great port of the arcade top-down shooter. Here's Blades of Vengeance with some weird sun damage to the cover, but it's still great to have it in boxed. And this is the Classic Collection, which features Gunstar Heroes, which is a much cheaper way of getting that game, by the way, and that's a wonderful game. The other games on that collection are great as well, but they're much easier to pick up. Here's Gaia-Res, and this is in a Japanese case. The game inside there is an American cartridge, but I love the Japanese case. That's how I got it, and I'm really happy about that. Here's Golden Axe 2, which I have in the box. I love Golden Axe. It's a wonderful beat-em-up game. I have the original Golden Axe game on the Mega Games 2, along with Streets of Rage and Revenge of Shinobi. On Mega Games 3, I have Alien Storm and some other great games there. Here's Michael Jackson's Moonwalker, very different from the arcade game. And some more Mega Drive games over here, next to the PlayStation Portable games. And I will give you a good look at these games. First up, we have Mystic Defender, which is a really cool platformer. Nomi's Beach Babe Orama, Phelios there, which is a scrolling shooter, and Splatterhouse 2, a horror-themed beat-em-up game. Very happy to have that in the box. Next up here we have Revolution X, some of the Sonic games, and Streets of Rage 2 in the box, which is really cool to have in the box. And then down here we have Super Highlight and Thunder Force 4, which is a fantastic shoot-em-up game, along with Xenon 2, Mega Blast, another amazing shoot-em-up game, and Mega Man The Wily Wars, which is actually a reproduction cartridge. Now on to PlayStation Portable. This is a fantastic system which I mostly play through component cables on my television. A lot of great role-playing games on this system, including Final Fantasy ports like Final Fantasy IV The Complete Collection, and here's Half Minute Hero, a fantastic role-playing game. Another great role-playing game is Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep. I actually have the special edition of this, and talking of special editions, here's the collector's edition of MotorStorm Arctic Edge with that fantastic packaging. Here's Namco Museum Battle Collection, which is a sweet collection of games. And Prinny, Can I Really Be a Hero? A wonderful platformer there. Another collector's edition here, Resistance Retribution, with that awesome packaging. Here's some more PlayStation Portable games leading on to Vita, Switch, and over to Xbox One. And at the end there we have some Sinclair ZX Spectrum tapes. First up, I'd like to show you Taito Legends Power Up, which has some exclusive games on the PSP version. Next up, The Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky, which is a great RPG game. And here we have for the Switch, I Am Setsuna, a cool RPG. This is in English. I have tested that out, and you can check out that video on my channel. Next up, we have the SNK 40th Anniversary Collection, which is a fantastic collection of games. And here we have Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Next up we have Too Dark for the Xbox One, the Steelbook edition. The packaging there is really interesting as it has nothing on the side. And here's Sunset Overdrive, which is a great game for the Xbox One exclusive to that system. And then some Sinclair ZX Spectrum tapes from magazines, but many have full games on them. Next I'd like to show you some more of my loose cartridges, starting off with the Famicom. First we have Argus. Next up we have XZ XS. Here we have Space Hunter, a cool Metroidvania style game. Star Force, I love shooters. On to Super Nintendo we have Batman Returns. Here's Battletoads and Battlemaniacs. There's Desert Strike, and here we have Donkey Kong Country and Draken, and there's Equinox. Next up, we're going to check out some more Super Nintendo with Mystic Quest Legend. Burning Heroes, a Super Famicom game. There's Plock. Next up, we have Power Rangers, a great beat-em-up game. Here's Street Fighter 2 for the Super Famicom. There's Super Mario All-Stars, Super Mario Kart. Here we have Super Mario World, Super R-Type, and Super Strike Gunner. All the Super games. There's The Secret Mission. There's Zombies Ate My Neighbors. For the N64, we have Bomberman 64, Bomberman Hero, Castlevania. Next up, we have Duke Nukem 64. There's GoldenEye 007, a fantastic game. There's Lilac Wars, aka Star Fox 64, Mystical Ninja there, and Pilot Wings 64. More N64, we have Quake 2. Next up we have Super Mario 64 and Turok Dinosaur Hunter, Turok Rage Wars, and Yoshi's Story, which is a great game. For the Master System, Aztec Adventure, Blade Eagle 3D, Choplifter. Here we have Ghost House. Next up is Hang On, an Asteroid Multicard, and Secret Command. Here we have the 8-bit Sonic the Hedgehog game, which is different from the Mega Drive version. There's Super Space Invaders and Transbot. Onto the Mega Drive here we have Budokai, and we have Bulls vs Lakers, FIFA 97, The Legend of Galahad, and James Pond 3. There's Gods. Next up we have Double Dragon, which is multiplayer, and Sonic & Knuckles, the lock-on cartridge. Here we have Splatterhouse 3, although the cartridge is splattered, it still works. And here we have Fantastic Dizzy. Next up is a Dungeons & Dragons game, Warriors of the Eternal Sun. Here we have Fire Shark, a great shooter. There's Ghouls and Ghosts. Next up we have Growl, a great beat-em-up game. There's Hellfire, another fantastic scrolling shooter, and here's Mercs, a great top-down shooter. There's Shining Force, a favourite RPG of mine, and Sword of Vermilion there. There's T2, the arcade game. Here's the Chaos Engine, also known as Soldier of Fortune, and Wonder Boy in Monster World. Next we're going to check out these shelves right here, which contain everything from Atari 2600 to PC, all the way up to Dreamcast and PlayStation. A couple of boxes on display here. I packed away many of my boxes to save space, but it's still great to have some on display. Here we have some more Commodore 64 and some BBC Micro here. I've got a lot of love for the Commodore 64 and I really need to put these all in one place. As you can see, I've got a lot of these data sets, they're in fact double stacked as well, so I have tons of these games. This leads on to my PC games in CD size cases, including Age of Wonders, which is a wonderful fantasy tactical game. We have some more PC games below that. I can still get most of my PC games to work through things like DOSBox and compatibility mode. I really love PC games, especially retro PC games. Here we have some great tactical games like Command & Conquer, Red Alert, including the awesome expansions as well. Next up we have Iron Maiden's Ed Hunter, which is a game and an audio CD as well. Gotta love me some Iron Maiden. Here we have Power, Lies and Corruption, a great compilation of games including Dune 2, which is one of my favourite strategy games of all time. Here we have Nemesis, an obscure vertical scrolling shoot 'em up game, and next up is Shock Troopers Second Squad. This is a totally illegitimate version, but it's great to have a copy of that for the PC. We move on to some of my more obscure systems here, like the CDI, the 3DO, and then on to the Sega Mega CD. Over here we have a HuCard game for the PC Engine, War of the Dead, which is a really sweet game, and Blazing Lasers, another HuCard game for the TurboGrafx 16. Here's Tetsuo Gaiden, a space shooter and a pretty rare game for the CDI. I also have Mutant Rampage Body Slam, which is really good on that system as well. Here's The Apprentice, which is a wonderful platformer on that system, and Voyeur, which we shan't talk about. For the 3DO, I have Blonde Justice. I guess we're sort of in that category right now for the 3DO, and if that wasn't subtle enough, there's Sex for the 3DO as well. Onto the Mega CD, I have Final Fight CD, which is a great version of the game which has fantastic music, and I have to mention Sonic CD because that's a wonderful game, again with great music, especially on the PAL version. Next up we have some Dreamcast games as we move into that section from the Mega CD. Some great games on the Dreamcast. I like to also show you Night Trap on the Mega CD, although I do have other versions of that as well. And for the Sega Saturn, I have Virtual Cop 2 in a CD case. Here's Charge and Blast, which is a really cool run and gun shooter. Next up we have Shenmue. This is how we got it in the PAL region. It's really weird because it has two cases. The packaging actually makes it pretty difficult to find this game complete, especially with the outer sleeve. Nevertheless, it's a great game. Another great game is Skies of Arcadia, which I recently picked up for the Dreamcast, and I've been looking for that. A fantastic role-playing game. And here's Sonic Adventure for the Dreamcast, another great game for the system of so many great games. And talking about great games, we move on to the PlayStation, which has a ton of great games. I love the PlayStation. Lastly, for the Dreamcast though, we have Zombie Revenge, which is a wonderful arcade port and a great game on that system. Now on to the PlayStation, and let's check out Blaze and Blade Eternal Quest, which is a wonderful RPG that's also multiplayer. And here we have Crisis Beat, a great beat 'em up game that's exclusive to Japan and PAL regions. Here we have the Die Hard Trilogy, which is a great collection of games, including a wonderful light gun game, which I've streamed on my channel. Here we have Disruptor, the mother of all shoot 'em ups, which is actually a Doom clone by Insomniac Games. And here we have Guys, a fighting game that features Final Fantasy VII characters. How cool is that? Next up we have some more PlayStation games, and if you're wondering why the cases are wider than you may be used to seeing, our PAL, Dreamcast and PlayStation cases were thicker to fit more languages into the manuals. Here we have Fear Effect, which is a really interesting survival horror game on the PlayStation. I completed that game back in the day, and here's Fear Effect 2 Retro Helix, which I picked up recently. I have a bunch of Final Fantasy games on the PlayStation, including Final Fantasy Anthology, that's a European edition, and Final Fantasy 6, 7, 8, and 9, all well-known and great role-playing games. Here's Hard Edge from Sunsoft, which is a game that plays very much like Resident Evil, and here we have Koudelka, another fantastic survival horror game on the PlayStation. Next up is Jade Cocoon, which is a really interesting role-playing game, which I would say is like a combination of Final Fantasy and Pokemon games. Next up we have some more PS1 games. The original PlayStation was a very popular system, and it's really easy to find games out in the wild, as it is with the PlayStation 2. First up, I'd like to show you Metal Gear Solid, and I also have the special missions there as well. Here we have Mobile Light Force, which is actually a Japanese shooter that's been reskinned. Here we have Resident Evil Director's Cut. I'm really a big fan of this game. I didn't own the Director's Cut for ages, and I'm really glad to have that. And I also have the other Resident Evil games, 2, 3, and Survivor. Survivor is a light gun game, which I'm a pretty big fan of, but I know it's a polarizing game among the Resident Evil community. Here we have Silent Hill, a really good game that I loved back in the day. And next up we have Siphon Filter, which is a really cool stealth game that I quite enjoy. Here we see the last of my PlayStation 1 games as we move on to my boxed Game Boy and Game Boy Color games. First up, let's check out Tekken. This is a really cool case for it. I haven't seen this case around very much, so that's really cool to have. I like the Tekken games, cool fighting games. There's Tekken 2, and Tekken 3 was a favorite of mine because it has Tekken Force mode, which is a really cool side-scrolling beat-em-up mode for that. Here we have Time Crisis. I love light gun games. It's a guilty pleasure of mine. Here we have Time Crisis Project Titan, and here's Wild Arms, which is a great RPG with a neo-western setting. Here we have SmackDown and SmackDown 2, which I really enjoyed for multiplayer back in the day, and here's X2 by Team 17, which is a sequel to Project X on the Amiga. Here we have the almost boxed Mystic Quest on the Game Boy. I have the manual and the map, which is why I want to keep it together in this Game Boy rental case. And for the Game Boy Color, we have another RPG, Heroes of Might and Magic. And we also have Star Wars Yoda Stories here, which is a really great game. Next up we have more Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, and moving on to Nintendo DS as well. First up, I'd like to show you for the Game Boy Color, Wario Land 3, really sweet game there. And for the Game Boy Advance, we have Metal Slug Advance. Great to pick these games up in the box when I can. I also have a number of loose cartridges I'll show you later in the video. Here we have Shining Force Resurrection of Dark Dragon, an enhanced remake of the Mega Drive game, and Shining Soul, a reimagining of the Mega Drive game. Next up we have Sigma Star Saga. It's a bit beat up, that's why it's in the box protector. Here we have The Legend of Zelda, Link to the Past, and Four Swords. Next up we have WWF Betrayal, which is in the wrong place. That's a side-scrolling beat-em-up game. And here we have X-Men Reign of Apocalypse, another beat-em-up game for the Game Boy Advance. Next up we have DS games here, Chrono Trigger, really cool to have that. Especially glad to have it as the original didn't come out in my region. Here's Final Fantasy 3 and some more Final Fantasy ports on the Nintendo DS. Really cool to have those so you can pick up and play them wherever. And here we have the rest of Nintendo DS moving on to 3DS to close out this shelf with a little room for growth. First up, let's check out Final Fantasy Tactics A2. There's also Final Fantasy The Four Heroes of Light there as well. And here we have Resident Evil Deadly Silence, an enhanced version of the original game on Nintendo DS. Really takes advantage of those controls. Here's Super Princess Peach, which is a cool Mario game. Makes you wonder why she hasn't been the main character of any other Mario games. Here's Fire Emblem Awakening and Fire Emblem Fates. This is the edition with all 3 games on it, and it's pretty expensive. Next up we have Senran Kagura with that interesting cover art, and of course Senran Kagura 2 Burst with, yeah, of course, what else would the art look like? I also have the pre-order art cards for that as well. Next up we have Star Fox 64 3D, The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask 3D, and The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time 3D. That's the pre-order packaging. Next up we'll check out some more loose cartridges for the Atari 2600, Game Boy, Game Boy Color, and some other systems as well. Here we have the Atari 2600, these are PAL cartridges first, moving on to NTSC cartridges as well. Here we have Mario Bros for the 2600, a cool port of the arcade game, and next up we have some NTSC cartridges separated here by Super Mario Kart, an NTSC cartridge for the Super Nintendo. There's Laser Blast for 2600. I can play my American Atari games on my 2600. They just come out with different colors, but other than that, they work perfectly fine. We move on to the Game Boy and Game Boy Color loose cartridges here, and on to Game Boy Advance, TurboGrafx 16, and some other system cartridges as well. On the Game Boy we have Arcade Classic 4, Bomberman GB, here's Donkey Kong, which has enhancements on the Super Game Boy, here's DuckTales, and many of these games have enhancements like color palettes on the Super Game Boy, Double Dragon, James Bond 007, Legend, which is a Japanese cartridge, that's an RPG, and Pokemon Blue and Pokemon Red here as well. We have some more Game Boy cartridges here, starting off with Fortified Zone, which is a sweet game. Here's Metroid 2, and here's Space Invaders. That has a 16-bit version on Super Game Boy, and Super Mario Land and Super Mario Land 2, 6 golden coins. For the Game Boy Color, we have Return of the Ninja. Here's Turok 3, and we have Turok Rage Wars there. Here's Paperboy, that's a great version. Quest for Camelot, R-Type DX, Tetris DX, and Turok 2 Seeds of Evil. Now here's some reproductions that I got together mainly for Magical Chase and Shantae. These games are very expensive, so I had to get reproductions. On the Game Boy Advance, we have Banjo-Kazooie, Breath of Fire, Eye of the Beholder, a D&D game, Metroid Zero Mission, Mario vs. Donkey Kong. Here's Phalanx, which is a great space shooter. There's Tony Hawk Pro Skater 4, and we have Ultimate Spider-Man. Here we have a Yu-Gi-Oh game, and behind that is Pokemon Leaf Green and Pokemon Ruby version as well. For the Game Gear, we have Crystal Warriors, which is sweet, and Global Gladiators, and there's Haley Wars, which is a wonderful shooter. For the Vectrix, here we have Berserk. This is a wonderful arcade game, and it's sweet to have it on the Vectrix. We move on to some TurboGrafx 16 Hue cards with Alien Crush, JJ and Jeff, Crater Maze, Galaga 90, which is a great game, Legendary Axe, and Vigilante. Now on to some Commodore, Amiga, and PC games. First up, we have ICUPS for the Commodore 64. This is a game that is wonderful, and it has great music as well, and I love shooters, so it's right up my alley. Here we have Vixen for the Commodore 64, and check out that box art. This actually was pretty controversial for the time. Unfortunately, there's no poster inside. Maybe one day I'll get that complete. Here's Top Shots, Strip Poker 2, and Data Disc for the Amiga. Next up, we have Legend of the Amazon Women for the Spectrum. I also have this on the Commodore 64 with different box art. And here's the Blair Witch Triple Pack. That's actually a pretty good collection of games on the PC. More big box PC games here. First, I'd like to show you the Icewind Dale Adventure Pack. Unfortunately, some of the contents of this box got water damaged. I would really like to have this complete. It comes with a bunch of extras, including a bonus disc with some additional content. Next up, we have the Neverwinter Nights Deluxe Edition. This includes the expansions. Really cool to have that all together in one package on the PC. A great game. Another great game here, The Temple of Elemental Evil, a classic Greyhawk adventure in the big box. More big box PC games here, starting off with the Platinum Edition of The Witcher Enhanced Edition. And here we have Dungeon Keeper in the big box, much to the jealousy of Lemcom in it. And here's Pool of Radiance, the Collector's Edition. This includes a bunch of cool extras, including a figure as well. And next up, we have probably the worst game in my collection, Stephen King's F-13, if you can even call it a game. Next to one of the better ones, Icewind Dale. And here we have some more big box PC games over here, starting off with Tomb Raider. This has some additional content for unfinished business. It features 4 additional levels that were not on any other version, so it's really cool to have that. And more Lara Croft here with this bizarre DVD game. It's based on Angel of Darkness, which does not bode well. Nevertheless, it's a nice oddity to have in the collection. And here's some more large box games over here. Starting off with Atari 2600, we have Defender. Really cool to have that in the box. Here we have some 3DO box games, including the Gunslinger Collection and Night Trap. There's some Sega Saturn games here. And here's some PS4 special editions from Limited Run Games. Cosmic Star Heroine, Night Trap there, Wonder Boy the Dragon's Trap, and Ys Origins. These are really cool, but they're very big, so it's hard to find places for them. We move on to some DVD size shelves here. They feature PC, Xbox 360, original Xbox, Wii U, Wii, and GameCube. And at the top here we have a bunch of boxes on display. Again, a lot of my boxes are packed away, but I still have a bunch here so that I can quickly get to the items inside, including light guns and controllers and joysticks as well. Here's a really interesting one, the Micro Uzi. I have no idea how this thing got released. Looking as it does, it looks like a real gun. And over here we have some more boxes here, including my box for the DK Bongos Master System 2. Here's my Game Genie. I modified my NES to be a front loader with a blinking light win, so I actually need that to get the games in and out. Here's the Super Game Boy. Bring Game Boy games to the big screen on the Super Nintendo. Now let's take a look at my GameCube games, moving on to the Wii as well. The Wii was immensely popular and it's a great system. It's really cool that you can play your GameCube games on your Wii. It even has ports for the controllers and memory cards as well. It's a shame the Wii U didn't have that functionality. Let's check out the Game Boy Player disc, which you need if you have a Game Boy Player on your GameCube to actually use it. Here's Mario Kart Double Dash. Now there's a sticker on there which I took off from my retail copy and kind of remade myself. That's the only thing that tells you that there's a Zelda bonus disc inside of there. Here we have Metal Gear Solid The Twin Snakes, that's a PS1 remake on the GameCube, another PS1 remake with Resident Evil here, and we have enhanced ports for Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3. These are really good versions of those games on the GameCube. Next up here we have The Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker. This limited edition includes a 2-game bonus disc, hence the gold packaging, and here's Day of Reckoning and Day of Reckoning 2. These are really good wrestling games on the GameCube. Moving on to the Wii now, first up we have Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles Echoes in Time. And here is Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles The Crystal Bearers. I've got a lot of love for Final Fantasy games. Here's Final Fantasy Fables Chocobo's Dungeon, which is a really sweet dungeon crawler game. Next up is Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn. It's really cool to have this. I'm still looking for the Fire Emblem game on the GameCube though. Next up is Fragile Dreams, which is a hidden gem for sure. Next up we have something really cool, which is the Arcade Hits Pack featuring 2 light gun games. The Wii motion controls are very good at that kind of game. Next up we have a wonderful collection of run and gun shooters with the Metal Slug Anthology. And next up we have the Metroid Prime Trilogy Collector's Edition, a great collection of Metroid Prime games. Here we have Okami on the Wii. The Wii controls are great for this game, and it's cool to have it with that sweet outer sleeve as well. Here we have Oni-Chanbara Bikini Zombie Slayers, which is a fun hack and slash game, and here's Pandora's Tower, which is a great RPG in this striking cool black case. Now we have some more Wii games. The Wii certainly had a vast library of games available to it. Moving on to the Wii U, which was an underrated system for sure. And then we have the original Xbox, which was a great system. It certainly had some of the best multi-platform ports of that console generation. For the Wii here we have Sin and Punishment, Successor of the Skies, which is a great run and gun shooter. Next to that we have the SNK Arcade Classics Volume 1, a great collection of arcade games. Here we have The Conduit on the Wii, which is a great first person shooter. Here's House of the Dead Overkill. Light gun style games really worked wonderfully with Wii controls, as did House of the Dead 2 and 3. Onto the Wii U we have Bayonetta and Bayonetta 2. Really cool to have those games on the Wii U. Here's Star Fox Zero, which is not good at all. And onto the Xbox we have Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which is a pretty sweet game. Over here we have Dark Watch, which is a really cool first person shooter. And also here we have the Dead or Alive Ultimate Collection, some cool fighting games there, and an Xbox exclusive we have Fable, and here's Fable The Lost Chapters for the additional content. And over here we have a unique game, Fahrenheit, also known as Indigo Prophecy overseas. That's a really cool game. We have some more original Xbox games here. It's a really good time to pick up games for the original Xbox. Even with backwards compatibility speculation on the Xbox One, the games are still very cheap and very easy to find, and there's tons of great games on that system. Let's check out some great games right now with Grabbed by the Ghoulies from Rare. That's a really fun game. Here's Gun Valkyrie, a run and gun shooter. Next up we have Hunter the Reckoning. I reckon that's a good one. And here we have Max Payne and Max Payne 2 The Fall of Max Payne. Here we have the Midway Arcade Treasures, a great collection of classic games. Here's Project Zero on the original Xbox. Great to have this on the OG Xbox because often the OG Xbox has better graphics and sometimes additional features. Here's Shenmue 2, a Dreamcast port. Really glad to have that on the OG Xbox, as well as Silent Hill 2 Inner Fears. This version has additional content and better graphics. Here we have Knights of the Old Republic for the original Xbox, and Knights of the Old Republic 2 Sith Lords, as well as Star Wars Jedi Knight Jedi Academy, which is a bit of a mouthful. And here we have more original Xbox games leading on to the Xbox 360. Now during the Xbox 360 and PS3 era, which wasn't that long ago, I was all Xbox 360, which is kind of funny because I've flipped on that now and I'm very much into the PlayStation 4 over the Xbox One. The first game I had for the original Xbox was Tao Feng Fist of the Lotus. It's an unsung fighting game. Here's The Bard's Tale. It's an RPG that's really satirical. Next up we have Tron 2.0 Killer App. I originally had that on the PC. And here's Ake Katana on the Xbox 360, a scrolling shoot 'em up game. Next up we have Batman Arkham Asylum, the Game of the Year edition. This has a really cool 3D cover and I've got it in a protector there. Next up we have Batman Arkham City Game of the Year edition, and next up is Arkham Origins. This is the complete edition. I love the Arkham games and I've been streaming them on my channel. Here we have Blue Dragon, an Xbox exclusive RPG, and this is the Capcom Digital Collection with 8 hit games on one disc. And here we have Dead Rising 2, a Steelbook edition, including some Zombrax, which is actually a pen as a cool little extra there in the packaging. We also have a guide to Fortune City. This is a cool map of the game, and it's a nice addition to go along with a great game. More Xbox 360 games here. The Xbox 360 is another console that it's really good to collect for right now. It was very popular and it's really easy to find the games. Plus, a lot of them are really cheap and there's tons of great games on this system as well. Here's some great shooters for the Xbox 360, Death Smiles Deluxe Edition and Dodonpachi Resurrection Deluxe Edition. Two great shoot 'em up games, and you know I love shoot 'em ups as well. Here's Enchanted Arms, an Xbox 360 exclusive RPG, and here's Eternal Sonata. Here's Fable Anniversary, an enhanced version of the original Fable, and there's Fable 2 Game of the Year Edition and Fable 3 as well. Here's Fallout 3 Game of the Year Edition and Fallout New Vegas Ultimate Edition. Here's Fist of the North Star, Ken's Rage 2, and next up we have Guilty Gear 2 Overture, which mixes things up for that series, making it a hack and slash. Next up we have Inversion, a third-person shooter from a different perspective. And here's Killer is Dead, the limited edition, a really cool game there. Next up we have LA Noire. This is a fantastic game, and this is the complete edition, featuring all of the additional content on disc, mixes it straight into the story. Next up is Left 4 Dead Game of the Year Edition. This is a great game, and here's Lollipop Chainsaw, the Nordic Edition, and that actually had the DLC on it, even though I got it second hand. Here's Lost Odyssey, an Xbox 360 exclusive RPG. Next up we have the Namco Museum Virtual Arcade, a ton of great arcade games on that collection. Here's Never Dead, a really cool game, and I'm dead certain about that. Next up we have Oni-Chanbara Bikini Samurai Squad. The game series is a great hack and slash series, despite how silly it may look. Next up we have some more Xbox 360 games. There's certainly a wealth of great games on that system, and later on we move into PC as well. I've got PC games of all different size cases, and I love PC gaming. For the Xbox 360, here's Red Dead Redemption Game of the Year Edition. This also includes Undead Nightmare, which is great. Here's a surprisingly good wrestling game, Rumble Roses XX. This game series is based on the SmackDown games. And here's Shadows of the Damned, a really dark and interesting game. Next up, we'll move on to the Elder Scrolls games. Here's Oblivion, this is an Anniversary Edition, and here's Skyrim, the regular edition, and here we have the Legendary Edition, including loads of extra content. Here we have the Orange Box featuring Half-Life 2 and Episode 2 and Team Fortress 2 and Portal. Here's the Saboteur, which is a great game. Next up we have the Serious Sam Collection, a serious collection of seriously fun games. Here we have The Witcher 2 Assassin of Kings, the Enhanced Edition. There's a bunch of physical extras in this amazing packaging, so it's great to have that. Here we have TNA Impact. This is a really fun wrestling game. And next up, I've got Worms. It's the Worms collection featuring 3 great games and a bunch of DLC all on one disc. Now we move on to more PC games. These are in DVD sized cases. Sometimes PC games can be a little tricky to get to work properly, but thankfully I'm able to get almost all of these games to run on my computers. First up, let's check out Payday. This is a really interesting arena battle game for the PC. And here's a cool game, Postal 2. This game surely has some kind of story, but it's never really bothered me because I get to go around killing everything that moves, and that's enough fun for me. I also have Postal 2 Share the Pain as well. Next up we have Locked, Loaded, Possessed. It's Will Rock, a hard rocking game for the PC. Now we're going to check out my PlayStation shelf. This goes from PlayStation 2 all the way up to PlayStation 3 and PS4 as well. We'll start off by taking a look at my PlayStation 2. Easily, I probably have more PlayStation 2 than anything else in my collection, and that's because it's a great time to collect for the PS2 because the games are so easily available and really cheap. Here's .hack Infection and .hack Mutation for the PlayStation 2. Really great RPG games. Here's another great RPG, Ark Twilight of Spirits. Next up we have Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance and Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance 2. They're fantastic action RPGs. Here we have Clock Tower 3, which is a wonderful survival horror game. Next up, let's check out Dark Cloud, which is another great role-playing game with farm sim elements. And here's Dark Chronicle, also known as Dark Cloud 2. Now let's have a look at the Devil May Cry games. The Devil May Cry series features fantastic hack and slash action. And here we have Dragon Quest: The Journey of the Cursed King, a fantastic role-playing game. And here is Drakengard, a great Dynasty Warriors style hack and slash game. Now here's some more PlayStation 2, and admittedly the PAL packaging leaves a lot to be desired, but the games are still great. Here's Fallout Brotherhood of Steel. It's a third-person Fallout game that plays like the Dark Alliance games. Here's Fighting Angels, a curious fighting game. Next up we have some God of War games. I'd like to highlight God of War 2 here. This is a special edition. Really glad to have that. And the God of War games play in widescreen, which is really cool. Here's the Grand Theft Auto Double Pack, and next to that I have a Grand Theft Auto 3 Ultimate Cheats disc from HMV. It's 100% unofficial and 100% awesome. Here's Grandia 2, another great role-playing game, and here's Half-Life. The PS2 version has better graphics and a 2-player mode not included in the PC release. Here's Haunting Ground, a really cool survival horror game. And next up we have Jade Cocoon 2, the sequel to the PS1 game. It's a fantastic role-playing game. The series is definitely underrated. Here are some more PlayStation 2 games, and once again I like to remark on how bland the packaging is, but the games are still fantastic. Here's Tomb Raider Anniversary Collector's Edition, and just above that we have a 007 Double Pack featuring Everything or Nothing, which is pretty good. Here's Maximo, part of the Ghouls and Ghosts games. It's actually a hack and slash, and there's Maximo Army of Zin, the sequel. Next up we have Mobile Light Force 2, another Japanese shooter that's been reskinned for a PAL release. Here we have Obscure, a really obscure survival horror. And here's Odin Spear, a side-scrolling hack and slash game. And here's Uni, which is a really cool third-person shooter. Here's Orphan Sign of Sorcery, a game I had back in the day along with Uni. And here's Persona 4, which includes the soundtrack, which is really cool. Next up here we have the Resident Evil games. First up is Dead Aim, and this is a really cool light gun game for the PlayStation 2, along with Outbreak, Survivor 2, and a bunch of great Resident Evil games that were on the PlayStation 2. Next up we have more PlayStation 2, that's right, but like I said earlier, it's really easy to get your hands on PlayStation 2 games, and a lot of them are dirt cheap as well. Here we have Digital Devil Saga 2, that's the collector's edition. I also have the regular version. The collector's edition came with this soundtrack in a DVD case. And here's Silent Hill 3. I later found out that the American version came with a soundtrack. I had to order that separately. Next up we have an undisputedly great game, Space Invaders Anniversary, and an interesting game, Space Invaders Invasion Day. Certainly very interesting. Next up we have Summer Heat Beach Volleyball, which is a better game than it looks. And here we have Tekken Tag Tournament, which is fantastic, and it features Tekken Bowl as well. Here we have Time Splitters, which is a fantastic first-person shooter and a great multiplayer game. The game has different skins for all of the characters, which was really impressive back then. And here we have the last of the PlayStation 2, moving on to the PlayStation 3. So let's take a look at Unlimited Saga for the PS2. This is a great role-playing game in fantastic packaging. Here's Valkyrie Profile 2, another great RPG, and Wild Arms 3, another great RPG. And here's the SmackDown games, the champion of which is Here Comes the Pain. That is a fantastic wrestling game. And lastly for the PS2, we have this import DVD movie player. I play a lot of DVDs, so it's great to have the option to be able to play imports on my PS2. And now we move on to the PS3. Let's check out Heavenly Sword, a cool hack and slash game on the PS3. And here's Heavy Rain. This is the Greatest Hits Director's Cut edition. You can't get that in PAL region, so I had to import it from America. Here we have Kingdom Hearts 1.5 Remix, that's the limited edition. And over here we have Drake's Fortune, first of the Uncharted games on the PlayStation 3. And down here we have more PlayStation 3 games, moving on to the PlayStation 4. And I have a lot of games from Limited Run Games in my PS4 collection. Great to have physical copies of those otherwise digital only games. Here's Tekken Hybrid, which is an enhanced version of Tekken Tag for the PS3. And down the bottom here we have The Shoot, which is a PlayStation Move game, which is really cool. Here we have the rest of the Uncharted games and Untold Legends Dark Kingdom, which is an action RPG. Here's the Borderlands Handsome Collection. It includes Borderlands 2 and the pre-sequel enhanced for the PS4. Here's Doom. I also have the UAC pack for that. And next up is Final Fantasy 15, the Deluxe Edition. I love that steelbook case. It looks fantastic. And here we have Night Trap for the PlayStation 4. That was from Limited Run Games. Also from Limited Run Games, we have Oceanhorn, Monster of Uncharted Seas. Great to have a physical version of that. And from PlayAsia, we have Rainbow Moon and Rainbow Skies. Fantastic turn-based RPGs. Here's Red Dead Redemption 2, the Ultimate Edition. That includes a bunch of extra stuff. Here's Resident Evil 7 Biohazard with that lenticular cover. Here we have Shantae Half Genie Hero Ultimate Edition, Day 1 Edition. I believe that was exclusive of Power Regions for the PlayStation 4 version. Here we have Wild Guns Reloaded, which is much easier to find than the original version, and it's enhanced for the PS4. Next up we have Ys Origin, which is a really sweet game, again from Limited Run Games. Here we have Antiquia Lost, Batman Arkham Knight Game of the Year Edition, Cosmic Star Heroine from Limited Run Games. Here we have Dimension Drive from PlayAsia and Ghostblade HD from PlayAsia as well, and The Evil Within. And lastly we have Tomb Raider, the Definitive Edition. Now let's take a quick look at some loose floppy disks for the Amiga and PC. Many of these may have come free of a magazine, like my favourite game of all time, Transplant for the Amiga, and therefore didn't have any packaging anyway, so this is how I store them. And here's some loose CDs. Many of these were victims of water damage to my game room, so the packaging has been destroyed. I'm either looking to get replacement cases or use them as backups. And finally, let's marvel at some of my special editions. Here's a Flying Power Disc Collector's Edition of Windjammers on the PlayStation 4 and Xenoblade Chronicles 2 on the Switch. I keep most of my special editions in these plastic containers because they're all kinds of different sizes and it prevents damage to them as well. Here we have Soul Calibur 5, the Collector's Edition. Here's Fire Emblem Warriors, the Limited Edition, and under that we have Star Fox Zero, the first print edition. Here's Bayonetta 1 and 2, the double pack, and there's Skyward Sword, the Limited Edition, and here's Majora's Mask 3D, the special edition for the 3DS. Here's some more special editions for you to cast your eyes upon. First up we have Kingdom Hearts for the PSP, and here's Dimension Drive for the PS4. I often take my games out of these boxes and put them on my shelves, as I did with Doom with the UAC pack. Next up we have Life is Strange, the Limited Edition. Under Ghostblade HD we have Rainbow Moon and Rainbow Skies as well. For the PlayStation 3 we have Tales of Graces, and under that for the PS4 we have Shantae Half Genie Hero Ultimate Edition, Day 1 Edition, and under that we have the Steelbook box for Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and under that we have Super Hydroha in that Super Nintendo style box. For the PlayStation 2 we have Mana Khemia Alchemist Alrevis, and for the PlayStation 3 we have the Limited Edition of Final Fantasy 13. Under that we have the SNK 40th Anniversary Collection. This is the Collector's Edition. We have Sonic Mania Plus here just on top of Lara Croft Temple of Osiris Gold Edition. And that's it. There you have it. That's my game room tour with a ton of different systems and over 1,400 games. If you like the video, please leave a like or a comment to let me know what you think, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more awesome content. And if you'd like to, you can support me on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate anyone that spends time out of their day to watch my videos. You're awesome. I've been MVL, and I will catch you next time on MVL Gaming.